because, you know, we'll keep coming back to some of these principles. Thinking about expressive arts therapy and sensory-based approaches, I started to think like, how, you know, do we bring something unique that we can work with people, work with parents, caregivers, work with individuals. It can be adults as well, because adults need this attachment work also. What are the things that we tend to focus on and are unique to expressive arts therapy and sensory-based approaches? So I came up with kind of this model of thinking about synchrony, attunement, grounding, and engagement, because I think those are four principles that really are embedded in what we can offer and bring into sessions with all kinds of people, you know. So here's my little difference here with PACE and S.A.G.E. According to Dan Hughes, I think this is really important. PACE is a way of being. So if you read some of his material, it really is teaching the parents and caregivers and adults how to be in the moment. And again, to slow down reactions, to respond in certain ways. I think when you bring expressive arts into it, and he's not somebody who brings so many props like a play therapist or any kind of expressive work into his work. It's really about talking a lot with the adults, and not so much the work with the adults and children together. We're often bringing in things that are, you know, are engaging, are action oriented, are sensory based. So I think the difference maybe is basically thinking about not only how do we be with that situation, those people, that family, that child and parent, but also doing. How do we engage them in doing together? So that's why I say the PACE model is kind of a foundation for my thinking, because that important foundation he laid about how do we be with, you know, a parent, how do we engage with children and parents and caregivers, how do we engage with children in general. We bring in expressive work, we're going to be doing something action oriented. So that's a little bit different than what PACE talks about. So, you know, here's the whole idea, I think, which is really foundational. We're going to talk about rhythm a lot today. Bringing in the capacity for good rhythms and healthy entrainment through co-regulation. So back to that first thing I talked about with like the co-regulation is really important. It's relationship plus regulating together. And that's the principle of synchrony. So how do we bring in experiences that help people participate in mutual rhythmic movement, rhythmic sound, rhythmic enactment, even mark making, drawing, and play for the purpose of co-regulation and in training each other to a good rhythm together that helps kind of promote that restorative and secure attachment. So that's the S in S.A.G.E. And then thinking about also, which is a little different, what's, you know, attunement. And I think this one I learned from working with a lot of different parents over the years of thinking like they never had this experience, even in their own upbringing, of being attuned to their caregiver or their parent. So they didn't know how to bring this into, you know, being with their own child. This is a capacity for learning how to express to your child curiosity and delight, you know, like be excited about what your child is doing. And also that, how do I give praise? You know, when should I give praise in response to expression and play? Anything that your child's doing. This sounds like really basic. Again, there are a lot of people that need somebody to model that to them. They need someone to give them ideas about how to go about this. No one was curious or delighted or praising them maybe when they grew up. They didn't receive a lot of that for whatever reason. You know, personal, family events, all kinds of things that maybe didn't create a circumstance for attunement to happen. So again, attunement, a little bit different than synchrony. It's actively noticing, recognizing, observing creative arts and play with authentic curiosity, delight, and praise. This is the thing I think that makes expressive work in a session different than what some people if you're a psychotherapist, may have been taught about being an observer. You have to be active here. You have to be active in demonstrating what attunement looks like, what delight looks like, what curiosity looks like, what praise looks like. So people can learn how to do that with their child, how to respond. So, a little bit different than synchrony, even though they're pretty close. Attunement has that part in it. Grounding. So this is another thing that I think, is more related to the idea that we need to reinforce and support safety. And how do we do that? And, this is another thing we all struggle with. And in relationships, sometimes this is a missing piece of using stabilization experiences through playing, through moving, through sound making, through pretending, through creating together to support a sense of safety. So, again, action oriented, not talking about it. So the PACE model, I'm not criticizing it, but it's more about talking people through these things. People have to actually practice these things, right? Before they can establish that sense of safety. They have to really be able to do things that are action oriented, that you feel in your body, that are grounding. So one of the things, today, again, we're focusing on rhythm, which can be, in a lot of circumstances, a really important piece of how we give people an experience of grounding through sound making, through doing something together that has the synchrony and attunement also embedded in it. And the last piece is engagement. Again, different than attunement, different than these other parts of the model, because I think one of the things too that gets missing in regulating relationships is the capacity for communicating with consistency, with just respect, and with acceptance. And these are, tough things sometimes for people to just talk about and learn from talking about it and defining what it is. They actually need to have that experience. So, a lot of times I learned this in just working with parents and children, families, when I worked with a lot of military families in the past years, getting them engaged with each other and being able to model to them how to be enthusiastic, how to be consistent, how to be respectful, how to be accepting. Sometimes I think about art therapy when we need to have the conversation with people. If a child's created a drawing, how do you respond to that drawing? What kinds of words or what kinds of things might you do that indicate your enthusiasm or respect or acceptance of what they've done? How do you treat the artwork? Do you have a special place for it in your home? So that's just one example, of something that's in the expressive realm. But, how do we engage is a really important piece. So all these things, very action oriented. I always say that attachment work is really about action. You have to be active in it. So I really, again, love the PACE model, but it's a lot about giving adults a lot of kind of ideas through talk about how they should engage with their children. Expressive arts, I think, brings us to another place where we can bring the senses in and action-oriented, hands-on kinds of experiences that we can practice with people. So think about parents and children. I even think about couples. I think about adults and just working with them through this. Sometimes, the therapist is the first one to really be enthusiastic about what they accomplish in therapy when they're making something or doing something or creating something. and show that acceptance and in very active kinds of ways. That makes an impression on people.